Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. I had to put my mind into overdrive just to stay up on the news. Dem's shutdown stunt appears to have backfired as the long government shutdown continued, which was totally needless since the CR continued the bloated Biden-Harris budget. Something interesting happened. The Dems are getting the well-deserved blame. In prior shutdowns, the GOP usually takes the hit due to the slopstream media's biased coverage and the gullible public. This time, the public is getting that the only thing that is keeping the government closed is a handful of Democratic senators. Even far-left operations like CNN have admitted that this is the Dems' fault. The tension in our air traffic control system itself should have been enough for Chucky to wise up and restart the government funding. However, a government union with 800,000 members told the Dems to smarten up and get things rolling again. And polls are showing that the public is getting it. The Dems are clearly at fault. The cover story is that the Dems want $1.5 trillion in additional spending, a good chunk of which would go to benefits for illegals. The word is out that this and 80% of the public is opposed to this type of funding. Further, many of us slave in salaried positions to get our health insurance. Therefore, there's not much sympathy for the minority of Americans who do not have health coverage. Note that the Dems are arguing for continuing extra subsidies for Obamacare that were put in effect during COVID. That's right, 4 years ago. Again, Americans are waking up to the giveaways here. A huge cutoff was November 1 when SNAP benefits were not funded. SNAP primarily benefits the Democrat base. Virtually all of us have that figured out now. Frankly, I cannot believe that a full 10% of Americans need help with supplemental food benefits. How is that program being administered to make sure that a great deal of this is not being given to those who do not qualify, like illegals? I have a strong suggestion: end federal SNAP benefits. This should never have been a federal program. I want federal taxes cut and let the states handle this for the residents of their own states. I bet they would be a lot more careful in administering the money if it was all state money. We here in Texas pay plenty of taxes, and the state can afford to feed the legitimately deserving of such benefits. The same story should apply for Medicaid. Major Canadian miscue. I have Canadian relatives in my family tree and have made a good handful of visits to our northern neighbors. It's a beautiful country with beautiful people. They have suffered for over a decade with the results of a failed administration. Sadly, Trump shot his mouth off about Canada becoming an American state. That went over like the proverbial lead balloon in Canada. In fact, the country was trending conservative, and the Canadians were so upset at the Trump rhetoric that they surged to a loser liberal. Negotiations between Trump and the Canadians have not gone smoothly since Trump took office. Reciprocal tariffs have been bounced back and forth. It did look like things were finally getting on track, Then Ontario Province Premier Doug Ford foolishly ran an ad from his provincial government in the USA with a clip of President Reagan speaking about free trade. The message being that Trump's tariffs on Canada, at least, were not in keeping with the approach of the popular American president. The obvious problem was that Reagan's speech said the opposite. The clip was taken out of context. Canada has not engaged in fair trade with the USA for decades. That is exactly why Trump started the tariff war with Canada. In turn, Trump called off pending Canadian negotiations. I expect that the dust will settle and things will get back on track soon. However, the ad was taken down as soon as Trump's reaction let the provincial head know that he had made a big error. At the same time, lefty Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is talking tough with little to help his cause. Hat in hand would be a better strategy. See our buddy over in the Ukraine about that one. That's right. Bill Gates changes his tune on climate change. My audience can predict that I'm not a big fan of Bill Gates or most of the West Coast techie establishment. He jumped into the headlines last week by declaring climate change will not lead to humanity's demise. Hey, I knew that decades ago, and I'm not even a billionaire. Why the general public would care about Gates' opinions on things other than computer software is unclear to me. The fact is that what most of us observe is called weather, not climate change. Yes, weather changes over time. Humans have only been keeping accurate weather records for just over 150 years. The Earth is billions of years old, so a tiny bit of data is being extrapolated well beyond any rational point. Heck, the entire middle of the United States at one time was a vast ocean. We know dinosaurs roamed well into the Arctic Circle. So there was a time when there was no ice there. On the other hand, there was a period from 1550 to 1850 when temperatures were cooler, and it was called the Little Ice Age. There were severe droughts in places, and Ireland famously had a famine. The point is that the Earth is constantly changing regardless of humans. I want to underscore that the focus needs to be on real pollution, not imagined pollution. Smart people know the difference. Around the world, some countries are taking care of their environment or working toward that, and others are trashing it rapidly. We know that the CCP, for instance, is building coal-fired power plants at a rapid rate. I doubt they come anywhere near meeting U.S. environmental standards. We cannot go fossil fuel free in the next decade. I do predict that we will be able to do so by 2050 for most applications. The mafia and sport betting scandals hit. You know, I'm not a sports fan. I know from the news if the local team is winning or losing. I know if the local college is doing well. That is all I need to know. Salaries in both college and pro sports are out of control. Further, when these over-pampered and overpaid cats disrespect Americans, that pretty much closed the deal for me. Recently, I've interviewed a couple sports writers who authored interesting historical books. Happy to do that. While on the topic of sports, I did want to mention that I'm astounded to hear that the NFL has the anti-American whack job Bad Bunny as the halftime show at the Super Bowl for 2026. Not a problem for me, as I'm boycotting the NFL entirely. However, I wonder how much of an audience Turning Point USA will attract with its counter halftime show. Now we hear that current pro basketball coach and a current pro basketball player who reportedly makes $26 million a year were accused of engaging in sports betting activities. I sure hope that's not true. The legal process is now pending. There was a medical scandal that I reported on over the summer with over about 300 people arrested. Many were doctors and nurses. These are well-paid professionals. Why would they engage in such actions? I asked the same question about those associated with pro sports. The money is vast already. Why compromise yourself for a few bucks? Well, the long-running FBI investigation produced more news. It turns out that some high-stakes poker games were also being rigged. The details of the rigging, from high-tech card readers to an X-ray poker table, makes for good headlines. I'm less concerned about that, but more concerned that these activities are allegedly tied to the Italian Mafia. That's right, folks, La Cosa Nostra. My goodness, we are dealing with TDA and drug gangs. I thought the Mafia was simply the subject of classic movies and the old TV show The Sopranos. so far. About 30 people have been arrested and charged for these scandals. Will be interesting to see how it all turns out. Trump favorite President Javier Milei won another term in Argentina. His reformist approach is something that Trump has hoped to accomplish here in the U.S. Apparently, things have been so bad for so long, the voters have figured out that promising something for nothing will not work. Hopefully, it bodes well for the off-year elections in New Jersey and Virginia in this country. The U.S. was involved as Trump spoke publicly in favor of Milei. Attracting criticism was the $20 billion swap of dollars for Argentine pesos to boost their economy at this time. The U.S. also bought another $20 billion worth of pesos in the marketplace. I want to underscore that just as I wish Trump had not spoken about making Canada a state or started fights with Brazil or Colombia, we should not interfere in the internal affairs of countries that are allies like Argentina. We have plenty to say grace over here at home. Third death at Walt Disney World in just 10 days. Well, maybe it's not the happiest place on earth. The Orange County, Florida Medical Examiner's Office confirmed the death of a guest at the Contemporary Resort Hotel, but no cause of death or specific timing was provided. I guess you can do that when you're the big dog in Orlando. There was also a suicide of a woman referred to as a Disney superfan. A man died at the Fort Wilderness Resort due to an apparent medical issue. I have been boycotting Disney since they went woke and abandoned their focus on family-friendly entertainment.
All rise.
Our series Interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure that you will agree that he deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Jake Lang, who gained national attention for his actions on January 6th when he attempted to save Roseanne Boyland as she died in a Capitol Police-induced stampede, and then his heroically rescued Philip Anderson, a black protester, from being trampled. Sworn affidavits concern his life-saving efforts, and viral footage of the rescue became central to his documentary. He was then a January 6th political prisoner for over 4 years without a trial and was pardoned by President Trump on January 21st, 2025. A New York entrepreneur, he founded Blessed News and produced The Truth About January 6th, Rumble's most viewed documentary with over 2 million views. From prison, he authored Patriot Prisoner, started the January 6th Legal Fund, which raised millions for defendants, and launched the Political Prisoner Podcast, a top show hosted by the Gateway Pundit featuring high-profile guests like General Michael Flynn and Dinesh D'Souza. Lang credits his strength and his Christian faith to help him survive over 900 days in solitary confinement. He now speaks about liberty, faith, persecution, the Constitution, and the fight for election integrity. In addition to all this, he's currently a candidate for U.S. Senate in Florida. We welcome Jake Lang for his first appearance on Saving America.
David, God bless you, sir. What an introduction. You know, for me, I was just a prisoner for so long, and to be out in society, to have the graces of these amazing shows and introductions and stuff, it's just too much for me. I was in solitary confinement for so long. This is such a dichotomy shift. Sometimes I can't even believe it's real life.
Well, it is real life, and we're so happy to have you in person here. As you know, we ask our guests 3 questions, and share with our audience how you happened to be at the Capitol on January 6th, and how did you end up saving lives? What did that look like?
Thank you, sir. It was, well, God brought me there. You know, President Trump had made this amazing tweet saying that he needed his patriots to come to the Capitol to peacefully and patriotically stand behind our congressmen and women that were going to be brave enough to decertify the election and to send it back to the state legislators for a recount and to certify it. So we were there with all this love of God in our heart, love of country, peacefully protesting at the Capitol. And that's when the unspeakable happened. Our own Capitol police officers that we pay with our tax dollars turned their weapons against peaceful, unarmed, kind of milling about crowd. We were just there on Capitol grounds. A lot of elderly people, families were there with their young children, you know, holding up signs, singing hymns, praying to the Lord Jesus. And they started hitting us with tear gas, rubber bullets, metal batons, concussion grenades. And we actually lost 2 lives in the very beginning. 2 men, Kevin Greason and Benjamin Phillip, died from a heart attack when at their feet exploded these percussion grenades that are only used in warfare. And we lost 4 unarmed Americans that day, including those 2 men and Roseanne Boylan and Ashley Babbitt, who was shot in the throat mercilessly. Her killer still roams free today.
Well, in fact, I think the Biden administration gave the killer an award, didn't they?
Yes, and they brought them to the Super Bowl and all of this, showboating about murdering unarmed patriots.
Yeah, it's an incredibly sad situation. The story's just coming out right now about the FBI had hundreds of agents in the crowd on January 6th. What was the impact of this, and why did it take 4.5 years for this serious issue to be revealed?
The impact, I said this in one of my recent social media posts on X, Jake Lang, J6, if you guys want to check this out. I was saying the repercussions of them hiding this clearly exculpatory evidence for them was people like myself did over 4 years and 6 days in disgusting, inhumane prison conditions. And on top of that, 900 days of solitary confinement. They segregated me from the population to try to keep me quiet and to destroy my willpower to keep on fighting. But God gave me a greater grace. And these people, Kash Patel has exposed them, saying that the 274 FBI agents was against all FBI protocol. That is not how they operate. They do not do crowd control at the end of the day. That is not their forte. So when they were in there in the crowd, riling up the crowd, inciting the crowd, moving the crowd in certain directions, who knows what their modus operandi was? But I can tell you one thing. We have had Trump rallies all across this nation for years with hundreds of thousands of people, and not once has it ever turned violent. Not once has there ever been any vandalism. So you know for a very certain fact that these 274 FBI undercover agents that were there in the crowd that day had deceitful and insidious intentions. And we're learning more and more every day. President Trump just 3 days ago tweeted out at 12 o'clock at night, he said, I want to know who every single one of these agents was and what their mission was that day. And so our jury members, if you remember this, the DC jury pool, wouldn't they want to have known if I came before them and said, hey, an undercover FBI agent handed me that weapon, or an undercover FBI agent busted that window out that I walked through? Wouldn't that be clearly exculpatory evidence that can help exonerate you? So the repercussions of this were 1,600 Americans went to prison, were persecuted relentlessly by the Biden administration, had our livelihoods destroyed, had some of our marriages. I know many, many men that I was doing prison time with, that their marriages dissolved. Their children were born. Some of them left pregnant wives at home. They came home to 4-year-old children that didn't know who they were. These are inhumane, grotesque situations that they put us in. And we are asking one simple question, David. Where is the restitution? Where is the compensation for years of our lives lost, for our families and our homes and our livelihoods destroyed? And so we're seeking restitution right now, actually, on a grand scale, a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit that my legal firm that I'm working with, Perry Sanders and a couple other attorneys, and we are seeking after with hundreds of J6ers on a class action lawsuit. We are seeking after damages done to us and our families and the American people. So this is going to be very interesting. We're looking to see how the Trump administration, Pam Bondi and the DOJ, responds to the civil lawsuit. We are praying and hoping that they work with us and not against us.
A quick follow-up question, because, of course, I was not there. Could you tell when you were in this large crowd who was the FBI agent? I also heard there was as many as 50 Antifa people who were dressed all in black and dispersed through the crowd. And I know that I mentioned from a personal friend of mine who was outside the Capitol and saw a whole bunch of folks come up from a subway station and were all dressed similarly and then merged into the crowd. So could you see certain people in the crowd who were kind of stirring things up or causing damage?
For me personally, I was so locked into trying to like there were people that were dying. Roseanne Boylan was trampled and was being covered with pepper spray and stuff. And now looking back and I'm thinking about it, there were definitely agitators there, whether they were Antifa, whether they're FBI. There were people there that were misplaced, out of place, and pushing the envelope in ways that patriots just don't do. There was, for example, there was a baseball bat that got passed around to like 15 or 20 different patriots. And the person that ended up bringing that ended up being some homeless man from California that was an avowed Antifa anarchist. And that guy was placing weapons in people's hands. And I actually ended up doing time with him, Josiah Kenyon. And he spoke about, literally quoted to me and to his prosecutors and whatnot, that he was there that day to get Trump supporters killed by escalating the level of violence there. So I personally, myself, in my own legal case, Josiah Kenyon, for me, I actually ended up trying to defend Roseanne Boylan's lifeless body with a riot shield and a bat, trying to push back the police officers that were encroaching and murdering people. And guess who handed me that? An Antifa member. So, I had no intention in my mind of that. But when you're in the thick of the moment and it's life or death and you've got women around you dying, and somebody hands you a weapon, you're going to end up using it if you're a man, because you don't want to end up seeing more women, meet the same fate as poor Roseanne Boylan, 38 years old, murdered on the steps of the Capitol. And so, my own personal legal case, I was victimized by this, deep state plot to make Trump supporters look like violent domestic terrorists. So I personally can tell you that Antifa was in the crowd inciting violence.
And that transitions beautifully into our third question for today. Your prosecution is the opposite of what we are hearing from around the United States, with hardened criminals being released without even cash bail. What prevented your legal support from doing the same for you? And I ask that, as you know, I'm a longtime attorney, not a criminal defense attorney, but I learned constitutional law like all of us do. And whatever happened to you, it sure doesn't sound like it complied with the Constitution of the United States.
No, it was antithetical to the Constitution of the United States. I was denied due process. I was denied speedy trial. I was kept in cruel and unusual punishment. But at the end of the day, we had a two-tiered system of justice that placed patriots on the domestic terrorist watch list. We were held in solitary confinement. I was put in cells with MS-13, ISIS. People that beheaded people were my cellmate because they couldn't house me with the regular, everyday inmates there. They had to put me with domestic terrorists. So they even tried to put us into conditions and with people, violent, known gang members, known killers that would literally kill us if we were, in a prison scenario. You could be killed over anything. You step in the wrong place, you put your clothes in the wrong place in the cell. So they were trying their hardest to get us murdered in prison, to segregate us from our families for years. I didn't have a family visitation, David, for 18 months. I couldn't see my mother, my father, my sister. My own fiance wasn't even allowed to visit me because she's a January 6er. They said one time for 1 hour in 4 years, I was allowed to visit my fiance for 1 hour. What kind of, you never hear about this with Antifa. You never hear about this with Black Lives Matter, rioters. This is a two-tiered system of justice where they want to crush President Trump and crush the conservative movement and instill fear in you, the listeners out there. Why did they do this? Because they wanted to make an example out of us. They wanted to send us up like a signal flare to every other patriot in the country. If you dare stand up against tyranny, if you dare question a stolen election, if you dare say Marxist regime leadership like Joe Biden, Beijing Biden, will not be accepted in America, we will encage you and your family. We will keep you from seeing each other, and we will hold you without trial for over 4 years. That is what they were trying to do, to scare the American people out of exercising their rights ever again.
Al, it's an incredible story, and I hope people will do further research on you and what you have going to help them do that. How can our audience get more information about you, your work, and your campaign?
Yes, all of this has culminated now into a campaign that our slogan is Take Back the Capitol. Right now, we still have the swamp. The deep state members are embedded like ticks in the United States Capitol. They're thwarting President Trump's agenda. And my candidacy for United States Senate in Florida is about one thing and one thing only: making sure that Trump's agenda, the mandate of the American people, goes through seamlessly. And you will have a fighter that cannot be threatened. They've done everything to me that they can already do. I cannot be bought. I will relentlessly pursue liberty for the American people. And if you guys want to check out that campaign, it's takebackthecapital.com. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm posting every day viral content, stuff that needs to be seen by every American. Go to X is Twitter, and just type in Jake Lang, Lang, and you'll find me right away. You can also find me on Facebook if you type in Jake Lang, if you type it in on Instagram, anywhere, that you get your news. But X is where the real news happens, because we don't have a filter on X. You're going to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. And I just want to thank you, David, for giving me this platform for years. The only way I was able to reach the American people was a little 15-minute phone call huddled up in the back of my prison cell. And now to be able to reach the American people and you guys to be able to see me is a great blessing. I thank, my Father in heaven, God Almighty, and his son, Jesus Christ, who saw me through the worst storm that the world could throw at me. And I thank the listeners out there, everyone who supported us, wrote us letters, donated, prayed for us. You guys made the difference in my time in there to be able to survive or not survive. So I thank you guys so much. And if you want to help out the January Sixers that are still struggling to get their lives back together, for the listening audience, go to j6rebuild.com. That's the letter J, the number 6, j6rebuild.com. And you can go on there and make a donation. We're still helping people get their electricity bills paid, buy a used car so they can get to and from work, stay out of homelessness. We've got a few people that we're helping pay their rent or putting them up in like an extended stay motel. So please, guys, j6rebuild.com if you want to make a patriotic donation to the J6ers. I manage that fund myself, so we'll take care of it. And God bless America. It's good to be home, and freedom should never be taken for granted, and it should be defended with everything you got.
Please proceed.
Business climate in the U.S. continues mixed. On the positive side, inflation is about 3%, although the target is supposedly 2%. The Fed just lowered the base rate another quarter point. However, mortgage rates went up, not down. While it may vary around the country, egg prices are down to normal, and it seems that there is a gas war brewing with some of the lowest gas prices I've seen in years. Just announced is that Social Security recipients will get a 2.8% COLA, that's cost of living adjustment, for 2026. Balancing this news are some major job layoffs. For instance, Target will eliminate 1,800 corporate jobs in a restructuring move. That is 1,000 laid off and 800 jobs will remain unfilled. Reports are that Target is not winning the retail war relative to other chain competitors like Walmart. Tough times for consumers is partially blamed for this. Amazon will lay off an incredible 30,000 employees. UPS will lay off an even more incredible 48,000 employees. These numbers are stunning. Some of this is blamed on overhiring during COVID while deliveries were king. Others blame the use of AI and robotics to do those many tasks today.
How does the defendant plead?
Shopping away. I recently reported on the bankruptcy of the Joann fabric stores. Well, 12 of their locations are now opening as Burlington outlet stores. Burlington reportedly bought out the leases of 45 of the former Joann stores. The 12 is the first batch of them to open. I find this interesting since I think of the Joann stores as much smaller than the typical Burlington outlet stores. In 2023, after Bed Bath & Beyond went bankrupt, Burlington obtained 44 of their stores. Speaking of big retailers, Walmart announced it will close its stores for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. My guess is that this is a money saver as they do not have to pay extra to have employees in those stores for those two holidays.
Please raise your right hand.
90% of adults may have CKM syndrome. That was a new one for me. According to the American Heart Association, CKM syndrome stands for cardiovascular kidney metabolic syndrome. It's a health condition that includes heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, and obesity. These might seem like separate issues, but they're actually closely connected. When one system is affected, it can make the others worse, creating a cycle that puts your health at serious risk. When these systems, heart, kidneys, and metabolism are not working properly, it can lead to a multi-system disorder, meaning that more than one part of the body is not working properly. This can cause serious conditions like heart failure, irregular heartbeat, heart attacks and clogged arteries, stroke, poor circulation in the legs and feet. The Heart Association says that the earlier CKM syndrome is recognized, the more can be done to prevent or slow down the damage. Lifestyle changes, medications, and coordinated care from your healthcare team can make a real difference, Americans. It's no secret that Americans have not been taking care of their health.
Objection, Your Honor.
Dr. Stanley K. Ridgely is the clinical full professor of management at Drexel University's LeBeau College of Business. He holds a doctorate and master's in international relations, security, and the Soviet Union from Duke University, and an international MBA from Temple University's Fox School of Business. He's a former military intelligence officer, and he received the George S. Patton Award for Leadership from the 7th Army NCO Academy. In addition to his teaching, Dr. Ridgely lectures widely in the United States and internationally. He's a frequent contributor to the national media, including Newsmax and American Greatness. In 2022, he was a guest on Saving America to talk about his book, Brutal Minds, The Secret World of Leftist Thought Reform in Our Universities. He is here today to talk about his new book, DEI Exposed, How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education. And we welcome him for his return appearance on Saving America.
Well, it's great to be here, David. Always good to see you. We've had quite the relationship going on, and quite a lot has happened since our first meeting years ago. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, it wasn't that long ago. It was 2022. It just seems like yesterday. Yeah, as you know, we ask 3 questions in an effort to give our audience a chance to get a view behind the scenes of your book, past the cover. And the first question is, how do you define the term DEI? Is the concept of DEI at fault, or is the way the liberals running higher education have applied it?
Well, there are 2 aspects to the acronym DEI, which stands, of course, for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a very benign sounding acronym. And a lot of people sign on to this because they believe it means falsely that it means, oh, well, it's just creating a level playing field. It means giving an equal shot at the brass ring for everyone. It means it's just teaching about race. It's just teaching about slavery. And as far as our higher education goes and certain corporate trainings goes, it's not it at all. In fact, I've just defined what it is not. What is it? Well, DEI, if you want to look at how it's actually applied on the college campuses, going beyond what they say it is, we find it is a noxious doctrine or ideology that basically divides human beings into 2 categories and 2 categories only: villains and victims, oppressors and oppressed, exploiters and exploited, evil and good. And these categories are based entirely on race. Everything else is subsumed below the categories of race: white versus non-white. And of course, the white is villainous, and of course, non-white are the victims, regardless, irrespective of personal history, irrespective of lived experience, irrespective of your roots, irrespective of where you're from, what your personal experience in your family entails, irrespective of religion. The defining characteristic is race. And all of this, DEI, exists under the umbrella that we live in an incorrigibly, irredeemably racist America that is riven with white supremacy culture. That, in essence, of course, is problematic, this fake white supremacy culture. And this is what is propounded on the college campus all the time, 24/7. This is the reality of DEI as it is practiced. It isn't this benign, anodyne, noble sounding, moral sounding notion that, it's just giving everyone a fair shot, the equal, the level playing field. No, it's none of those things. In essence, David, the proponents of DEI have handed usually good-hearted liberals an empty decanter. And they say, pour what you want to into this empty decanter. Pour your good feelings into it. Pour your vanity. Pour your virtue. Pour your assumptions about DEI into the decanter, and that will be DEI. So this is why proponents of DEI, you'll find on social media and in the university, are so virulent in their hatred of people who do not subscribe to this fake or this fraudulent notion of DEI. Why? Because people like myself are questioning DEI. I'm actually questioning their imaginary notion of what constitutes DEI, their narcissistic view of it, their personality that they have poured into this decanter. And this is why I find myself very, very briefly in a conversation with proponents of DEI who want to talk about the front stage version of it, the benign, imaginary, cosmic justice version of it, when I talk about, well, what's actually happening on the campuses? What do these people believe? And that is what I share with the audience in DEI Exposed. I expose all of this nonsense for the mysticism, the alchemy, the astrology, all of this nonsense for what it actually is in their own words. It's a very accessible book, and I think it's a really fun book too, because it's funny.
Now, I would say that the tide turning on DEI most likely was triggered by the Supreme Court rulings in the affirmative action cases that, which incidentally were not brought by white people. They were brought by Asian Americans who were being rejected at Harvard University because they were considered the privileged class along with white Americans. It's a fascinating situation because they are a minority in the American makeup. While the Asian community is rapidly growing, it is still far less than the number of Black Americans and even much further less than the number of Hispanic Americans. And it's interesting. Do you see any progress in higher education reform at this time? Any examples, good or bad? What are you seeing? And of course, you are at Drexel University. And since I went to Penn undergrad, unfortunately, I know that Drexel and Penn, the two campuses are contiguous. They literally, you don't know when you've crossed over generally between one and the other.
Yeah, that's right. And I feel sorry for you, David. I'm sorry to say you went to Penn. Penn has not gotten any better, probably immeasurably worse, given the events of the last year and a half. I know that you asked me if there's been some change or there will be some reform, and I think, yes, there is, because when you look at my previous book, Brutal Minds, I say in that book that university presidents and the cadre at university, senior leadership, understand only one language that has two venues of it, two veins of it. One is money, funding, and the other, and this is federal funding, but it's also donor money, and the other is bad publicity, which is linked to the other, because this bad publicity can cause a university's enrollment to plummet. It can cause donations to dry up. And no one wants to be in the position at a university going out and facing the public every day and trying to explain away the bad things happening at this particular campus. Well, the Trump administration, through the vehicle of the Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, and the Department of Justice, are speaking the language that university presidents understand. And this is long overdue. Universities, as you know, have flown under the radar for far too many years, propounding this notional idea that the university hasn't changed. It's still a wonderful, yeasty marketplace of ideas where ideas can contend. No, it's none of those things. It's a crucible of indoctrination where Marxists and basically literally communists who claim to be communists and are very proud of that, basically are formulating or creating cadres for the struggles of the future. Very prominent communist/Marxist theorist Frederick Jameson at Duke said this a number of years ago. That's what the universities are for, to create cadres of a vanguard for the revolutions of the future on the Marxist side, of course. So what we have now, however, is an expose of these folks, bureaucrats, presidents. They are being made to think what's actually happening and recognize what's actually happening on the college campuses. All the protestations and all the pronouncements prior to this were basically lip service to principles of academic freedom, principles of free speech, principles of inquiry, free inquiry. None of that matters worth a whit. Okay, what matters to the university presidents, what matters to the cadre, is the money coming in that supports these lavish lifestyles, that supports a bloated bureaucracy, of which DEI is a very prominent part. I'll give you University of Michigan as an example. Their bureaucracy, which is at the forefront, or I should say was at the forefront until they ended their program last week, at the forefront, having spent $250 million. That's $250 million since 2016 on DEI. With employing over 260 employees that are supposedly doing the work, whatever that consists of, doing the work of DEI. And we find that the top dog, the provost, the assistant provost for DEI, her name is Tabia Shavu Sellers, was bringing in $417,000 in salary and benefits as the top.
Unbelievable.
Yes. In fact, University of Virginia, the top two DEI people bringing in more than $500,000 apiece. And
Absolutely.
the third ranking person, yes, the third ranking person is bringing in $405,000. So you effectively have $1.5 million going to three people in the UVA, University of Virginia, DEI hierarchy. What are you getting for that $1.5 million, especially when you serve as contradistinction to the governor of of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, bringing in $175,000 a year to manage the affairs of the entire state.
No, it's unreal. By the way, you do know that I have 2 graduate degrees from UVA.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I can tell you, though, I am a member of the Jefferson Society.
Well, that's good.
And we are a bunch of conservative alumni who are trying to get the current president, who is not well respected by the responsible former business graduates. I went to the Darden School, and obviously one of the best MBA programs out there, along with Duke's MBA program, by the way. And so it's a very interesting situation. But anyway, so our third question is, what advice would you give to parents seeking to send their high school students to college at this time? I mean, I'm a grandparent at this point, but I sure as heck as a parent don't want my kids sent to be turned into commies or into, white hating people. I want them to love all different kinds of people and races.
I think your sentiment is shared by the vast majority of people in this country, and want nothing to do with this noxious, toxic ideology propounded by DEI people. I think one of the biggest things that a parent can do, and I'm going to give several, the biggest things is to recognize that DEI is not benign, it's not harmless, it is a concerted assault on the students, and I mean all students, because it basically slots students and teaches them in these indoctrination sessions, teaches them that you're either a villain or you are a victim, whether you recognize it or not. If you're a villain, you're a white person, well, you have to confess your complicity in a white racist, white supremacist society. If you happen to be a minority, of course, people of color, that depends on the occasion. As you quite rightly mentioned, that Asian American students were part and parcel of this Supreme Court decision, Students for Fair Admissions, attacking Harvard for its racially discriminatory admissions policy. And so, depending on the circumstances, Asian Americans are considered people of color unless they butt against this notion that they're oppressed, in which case they become what is called white adjacent. And this indicates that they share in some uncertain way the privilege that is bequeathed to white folks. And so I think that parents need to understand that this is the reality of the college campus, that there are dozens upon dozens of people on every campus in America that subscribe to this DEI front stage, but basically also subscribe to the backstage noxious content of this binary worldview of evil and good, oppressors and oppressed, and want to teach this to college students, faculty, and staff as well. And the best thing to do is to understand this. Students should understand this as well. Brutal Minds, my book, and DEI Exposed act as a wonderful companion volume, because DEI Exposed is a continuation of that into the bizarre, mysticized world of DEI. And it tells you how to recognize when you are in a threat situation. Now, the long-term reformation of our universities is going to be just that. It's a long-term project. But what you can do right now as a student or a parent of a student is recognize the dangers, not necessarily opt out, not necessarily not go to a place like Columbia. Well, Columbia, maybe you don't want to go. Okay, but go to a place like Penn, you go to a place like Duke, you go to a place like Harvard, you go to a place like Drexel. Recognize that there are things that you can do to fight against these folks. And we're not talking about, literally chest thumping and chest bumping with the bad guys on the campus. It means understanding how to emasculate them through your lack of participation in what is patently illegal activity on the case of people who are trying to indoctrinate you and conduct it's called human subject experimentation, and people are protected from the Office of Human Research Protections, a federal agency. And once you understand your rights as a human being, your rights as an American citizen on the college campus, increasingly so at private schools like Drexel and like Penn, once you understand that and understand that there are avenues of complaint that the Department of Education has just set up, where you can take one of your complaints, if you're not happy with what's going on, take it straight to the federal government. And the federal government has been incredibly responsive, as I think you know, up to this point. And I foresee more of that. And so there are avenues of I would say complaint, of communication, not necessarily complaint, but a communication that things are not right at XYZ school. And we want you to come look at what we're doing here and find out, discover through the process of transparency, if indeed there is something untoward happening, and then do something about it.
And of course, one of the most unfortunate parts, and I'll just speak for myself, Dr. Ridgely, is I came from the wrong side of the tracks. I was oldest of 7 kids from a listed military family. We had nothing. My parents, my mother had a GED. My dad, finished high school with a general high school degree. And my parents emphasized education. Education was the path forward. And I had set my sights on going to an Ivy League school. And when I got the full scholarship to Penn, by the way, I got a full scholarship to Duke and turned it down in favor of, oh my God, I'm getting into an Ivy. And I could also have gone to the honors program at the University of Virginia, didn't even apply for it because it was like, I'm shooting for the stars and this is, the path forward. And I think part of the unfortunate thing that we're facing as, in my case, grandparents, is that we're seeing some of the best known universities in the world, Harvard, Yale, and Penn, Columbia, and on the public side, University of Michigan, University of University of Virginia, Berkeley out in California, that these schools are the ones that have been most impacted by this incredible destruction. And so I think people are going to have to, really evaluate whether you want to go to, my sons went to for cost reasons, went to the community college for a couple of years and then went to different universities after that and worked out well. But generally speaking, I think parents also are going to have to do more before the kids get out of the household to make sure that they understand the value of capitalism and the importance of our true diverse society, which is we give everybody a fair chance.
You're exactly right on that, David. It's shopping around, and I certainly appreciate the community college route because people save a lot of money by doing that. And
Right.
and move transfer to a 4-year college and get that very same degree, far less in debt than they otherwise would have been. I want to point out something that people really probably haven't thought about, but the problem comes with DEI for the same reason that Luigi Mangione decided to assassinate this Brian Thompson back on December 4th. And that is Luigi Mangione acted as an ideologue. He did what his ideology, anti-capitalist ideology, told him to do. This guy, Brian Thompson, that he didn't know and had not wronged Mangione at all. Mangione wasn't even a client or wasn't even a customer of the United States. And the fact that he decided to shoot this guy in the back, kill him, because that's what his ideology told him to do. It has nothing to do with Mangione's personal experience, which, by the way, was very privileged, being the son of wealthy parents. And so you look at people who will do what an ideology tells them to do. Of course, Mangione went to Penn Graduate School. He learned this ideology somewhere. And the fact is, you look at people burning Teslas, throwing firebombs, they're doing what their ideology tells them to do. You look at people who are protesting and assaulting and threatening on the college campuses, threatening Jewish students, assaulting them, setting up encampments, trespassing, vandalism. They're doing what their ideology tells them to do, the decolonization riff. And then you look at people who have DEI, they're doing what their ideology tells them to do, dividing society and people into these two categories, irrespective of anything else about them. And then it's very paranoid, because if you and I walk down the street, we see someone coming towards us, it's a stranger, we don't know this person. We might see how they're dressed or make some sort of preliminary judgment that way. But basically, we're going to say, okay, either I won't even interact with this person, or I'll find out more about them. When a DEI person trained in DEI sees someone walking down the street toward them, they see either a villain or they see a victim, and they make a whole host of presumptions about that before they even speak to that person. And this is the binary, the Manichaean evil and good binary that these DEI people believe in. It's what they train young people into, this alternative reality, and then they say, behave according to this alternative reality, just like Luigi Mangione. It's just a matter of degree.
I do want to insert here, since I'm the attorney on the call, is that these are allegations against Luigi Mangione, and he is accused. He has recently been brought before. I understand Pam Bondi has announced that this is being identified as an interstate hate crime or something like that, and that they are going to seek the death penalty. Apparently, he has pled not guilty. However, in fairness, the evidence against him is rather overwhelming. There is videotape of the crime. There are eyewitnesses, because he did this in front of a hotel, not private in a hotel room or some narrow corridor. He did it in the entrance to a hotel, a busy hotel on a busy street. And in fact, he could have injured many other innocent people. Background on Mangione, I just heard that he went to private school K through 12, and he came from a privileged family. I believe he did both of his degrees at Penn in electrical engineering or something like that. And the person that he shot went to Iowa State University, not a person that we would associate with a privileged start. And it's interesting for me, because I am, in fairness, an Ivy Leaguer. And if somebody said, well, Dave, you're a white guy and you're an Ivy Leaguer, you're part of the privileged class. But I told you a few minutes ago about how I got there. And I didn't get there from the privileged class, I guarantee you. And in fact, at my high school, which was full of military dependents, we were my sister who followed me the next year, we were the first two honors graduates from the military housing project where we lived. The first two honors graduates back to back. And the advisors didn't know what to do with us. It was like, well, those kids don't usually go to Ivy League schools and stuff like that. So just this assumption that just because of the color of skin determines who you were. My best friend at the University of Pennsylvania was a Black artist who was 22 years my senior. Sadly passed away. Lifetime friends, stayed in touch with him and his wife, stayed in Philadelphia, the two of them. And he passed away about 5 years ago, and his wife, who of course I knew for the same length of time, passed away about 4 years ago. By the way, a mixed race couple. And back when that was really verboten. And that's the thing, is that people need to understand that you've got to make your own decisions in life, and you've got to relate to people as individuals, not as a class group. And it's interesting because of the way that they've twisted things that you would think would be the liberal philosophy would be giving everybody a fair shot.
Right. And this is why it's so perverse, this idea that, well, diversity, equity, inclusion means, oh, it's a come one, come all kind of thing, but we're going to judge you in advance based on immutable characteristics. I should say that equity and inclusion, I should say diversity, equity, and inclusion, the idea of inclusion and belonging, that's their latest phrase, inclusion and belonging. Colleges and universities exclude people all the time at admissions time. They tell people they don't belong all the time. And unless and until colleges go to an open admissions policy where everyone is, we want to include you. We want you to feel a sense of belonging here. Not say, okay, well, I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the enrollment management. I'm going to let you in, but I'm going to keep all of you people out. But once you get here, then we engage the inclusion and belonging aspects of our philosophy. There's so many.
You know what? We could do another half hour easily, but Dr. Stanley Ridgely, thank you again for joining us the second time here on Saving America. Tell our audience about how do they get more information about you and your couple books that you have out.
Well, I urge people to reach out to me on LinkedIn, do a search. I'm right there. And my books, DEI Exposed, is available on Amazon in 3 popular formats, in paperback, hardback, and Kindle. And it's got an Audible version coming out next week for sure.
Excellent.
It's going to be I really love the narrator. I wish it was me. I wish it was you with a better voice than mine. But it's going to be absolutely fabulous. I look forward to listening to it in someone else's voice. But it's available on Amazon, and it's available on Barnes & Noble. And you can also go to my website, brutalminds.com, and you can see my previous book. And you can also read a little bit more about DEI Exposed. I think it's essential reading for understanding and cutting through the BS that we find in most of what's going on in the public media and what the press likes to say about DEI. And so that's my encouragement for your great audience out there. And thank you for the opportunity for being here.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
The latest strategy, self-deportation. In what I believe is a reaction to the Dems' lawfare being practiced to protect the criminal illegals in this country, a bribe is now being offered for self-deportation. The idea being pitched in TV commercials by Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem is to leave now and you might be able to return legally later. That began right after Trump took office. Now the new deal is a free plane ticket, and after you go home, the illegal can get $1,000 and still be eligible to apply to emigrate here legally in the future. The funny twist is that the illegals here can use the app developed by the Biden-Harris administration to sneak them into the country is now being used for self-deportation.
This session is adjourned.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.